1987. A nurse working the night shift at Willowbrook Asylum in rural Ohio walked into room 2A to check on a patient. The room was locked from the inside. No windows, no other exits. But when she finally got the door open, the patient was gone, not escaped, not transferred. Gone. What the investigation found inside that room has never been fully explained. The case file was sealed for 30 years. And the nurse who opened that door? She never worked another night shift again. This is Case File 001. Willowbrook State Asylum opened in 1921 in Hardin County, Ohio. On paper, it was a psychiatric facility, a place for treatment. But by the 1970s, investigative journalists had documented something far darker: overcrowding, neglect, and patient disappearances that were quietly recorded as transfers or deaths. Between 1971 and 1989, 14 patients vanished from the facility. No body, no paper trail, and no credible explanation. Most were written off as runaways. But here's what doesn't add up. Willowbrook sat on 40 acres of fenced land surrounded by farmland. The nearest town was 11 miles away. Patients who couldn't walk, who couldn't speak, who had no money and no contacts, were supposedly just leaving. Staff reported strange things long before the disappearances made headlines. A maintenance worker named Gerald Pruitt told a local newspaper in 1983 that certain rooms in the East Wing had a smell he couldn't describe. Not rot, not mold. Something else. Something, he said, felt like a presence. Orderlies refused to work the East Wing alone after dark. And room 2A, located at the very end of the East Corridor, had a history that stretched back to the asylum's earliest days. 3 patients assigned to that room between 1921 and 1960 had died under circumstances that were, at best, unexplained. The 4th patient assigned to room 2A in 1987 was a 34-year-old man named David Calloway. And on the night of March 14, 1987, he became the 15th disappearance. David Calloway had been at Willowbrook for 6 months. His records, partially declassified in 2019, describe him as quiet, cooperative, and showing signs of improvement. He was not a flight risk. He was not violent. He was, by all accounts, a man who was getting better. The night nurse on shift, a woman named Patricia Hensley, did her rounds at 11 p.m., 1 a.m., and was due to check room 2A again at 3 a.m. At 11 p.m., David was asleep in his bed. At 1 a.m., David was awake, sitting upright, staring at the wall opposite his bed. Patricia noted this in her log. She described his expression as, and this is a direct quote from her report, calm in a way that made her uneasy. She dimmed the light and continued her rounds. At 2:47 a.m., she returned to room 2A. The door was locked from the inside. Room 2A had a simple bolt latch on the interior, a safety feature, ironically, installed to let patients feel secure. It could only be engaged from inside the room. Patricia knocked. No response. She called for the overnight orderly, a man named Ray Campos. Together, they forced the door. The bed was empty, sheets undisturbed, as though no one had been sleeping in them. David's shoes were still beside the bed, his socks, his clothes folded neatly on the chair in the corner, the chair that Patricia said had been empty at 1 a.m. The single window in room 2A was latched shut from the inside. The room was 11 feet by 13 feet. There was no closet no crawl space, no false wall. The ceiling tiles were undisturbed. Ray Campos would later tell investigators that when he stepped into the room, he felt something he struggled to put into words. He said it felt like standing in a space that had recently been emptied. Not a room someone left, a room something had passed through. David Calloway was never found. No body, no trace. Not a single confirmed sighting in the 37 years since that night. The official investigation lasted 3 weeks. Hardin County Sheriff's Department classified the case as a missing person, presumed escape. The file was closed in April 1987. But a local investigative journalist named Carol Metz spent 4 years digging into what the official report left out. What she found was published in a small regional paper in 1991 and almost entirely ignored. Almost. Carol discovered that in the 48 hours before David's disappearance, 3 separate staff members had independently reported the same thing. A low humming sound coming from the east wing. Not mechanical, not from the pipes. A sound they described as rhythmic, almost like breathing. The facility's maintenance logs showed.
Carol also tracked down Patricia Hensley, by then retired, living in Columbus. Patricia confirmed one detail that had never appeared in any official report. When she and Ray forced open the door to room 2A, before either of them stepped inside, the temperature in the room dropped sharply. Not a draft, not the HVAC. A sudden, significant drop. Patricia said she could see her own breath. It was mid-March. The asylum was heated. No other room on that corridor showed any temperature anomaly. She never reported this detail to investigators. She said, simply, that she didn't think they would believe her. Carol Metz submitted her full findings to the Ohio Department of Mental Health in 1992. The department acknowledged receipt of the documents. No further action was taken. The east wing of Willowbrook Asylum was demolished in 2003. Room 2A no longer exists, except in the records, and in whatever Patricia Hensley still sees when she wakes up at 2:47 in the morning. Section 5. The Twist. Here's where this case gets strange. In 2019, a genealogy researcher named Thomas Vick was tracing his family history through Ohio public records. He came across a death certificate, David Allen Calloway. Date of death, March 14, 1987. Cause of death, cardiac arrest. Location, Willowbrook State Asylum, Hardin County, Ohio. David Calloway was recorded as dead in the official state records on the exact same night he disappeared. Not missing, dead. The death certificate had been filed 2 days after he vanished. It was signed by a facility physician. It referenced a patient file that, according to the asylum's own intake records, no longer existed. Someone filed a death certificate for a man the facility was simultaneously reporting as a missing person. Either David Calloway died in room 2A that night and something was covered up, or someone made sure there would be a record of his death before they even knew what had happened to him. Neither explanation makes sense, and yet one of them has to be true. Section 6. Close and Ktay. David Calloway, Willowbrook, Ohio, March 14, 1987. A locked room. A cold nobody could explain. A death certificate for a man who was never found. Whatever happened in room 2A that night, the official record wants you to believe it was ordinary. A man escaped, or a man died. But Patricia Hensley still wakes up at 2:47 a.m., And she says that after 37 years, she has never once been able to explain the look on David Calloway's face when she checked on him at 1 a.m. She said he wasn't looking at the wall. He was watching something she couldn't see. This has been Case File 001. If you want to know what we find next, subscribe. New cases drop every week. And if you're watching this at 2 a.m., you're not alone.